Welcome to my podcast that previously had a name, however, I have now forgotten said name. This episode is going to be brought to you by Post-its. Write things down, stick your Post-it somewhere, and then maybe you'll remember the name of your podcast. Not officially sponsored, however, just a recommendation. Like all great podcasters before me, you will likely encounter some audio issues. Best to improve upon them as we go on. Thanks so much for listening, and have a great day. Don't forget to fuel up on positivity. Here's the deal. I've been trying to wrap my head around content ideas for about the last week. I've considered that I don't have the ability to stick with a hobby. So I was like, ooh, let's go through all the hobbies I've ever tried. I want everyone to keep in mind when watching any of my videos, I am not qualified to provide any sort of services. All I'm doing is sharing my experiences. Y'all may find them interesting, y'all may not. I'm gonna go ahead and start making my list. I'm gonna put this battery back on the charger. I probably need to get another battery. I showered, which is a plus, because I'll be 100% honest. It's very difficult for me to shower, for me to want to shower, for me to have the desire to shower. So I'm kind of proud of myself that I did that today. Also, this channel is called Fuel Up on Positivity. So you might be thinking, why are we gonna talk about all the hobbies that you failed at? Or some of your tragic, whichever. You know what? The most negative thing I'll probably say about the hobbies, unless they were illegal activity, because yeah, I'll share those too. The most negative thing I'll probably share with you is the amount of money that I spent on them, even though I didn't continue them. Other than that, I'll share with you what I learned. And yeah, what I learned might be that I don't like that hobby. I'm gonna get into this. I'm gonna start the list. I'm gonna make the list. And then start going down the list. We'll see how it goes. The number one goal of this hobby, this filming right here, right now, is not to spend more money. I might have to buy a microphone. It's something I've been thinking about doing for a while. But do I really need to spend more money on a hobby I'm probably not gonna continue? We'll find out. Time for a cat nap or something. But have you just decided you're going to be the star? Oh, really, you are going to be the star? For Scenarios? And the rest is me. I made my list and then lost the battery to my camera. Lost a whole bunch of stuff for my camera. Still a little concerned about that. Let's see, like, something that's first on the list. There was a reason I just picked up my camera and I honestly can't remember why. You know what we're gonna talk about? We're gonna talk about editing videos. So I have to fold laundry, so I figured we could fold laundry and I can chat at the same time. Full disclosure, nothing in my space is tidy. I was born in 1990, right? That's where we're starting. No, just kidding. We're not gonna start with the 1990s. But I was in high school in the early 2000s, and I was a part of our video technology department. That shirt is dirty. And in the video technology department, we actually worked on a show for the school. I might see if I can, dig into the archives and find some of that somewhere. Truth be told, I actually wanted to go to college to be a video editor. I know, you're looking at this editing and going, dear God. Turns out, skills that you had, when you don't use them, you lose them. So that's why this editing is just not great. And I'm not trying to be demeaning, because my whole site thing is Fuel Up on Positivity, right? Anyway, one of the best teachers I ever had, her name was Mrs. Shelton, and she taught our video broadcast class. And I think initially I had taken intro to broadcast with Princess, and she's the one who kind of got me into video recording. Back then we had, like the camcorders. In all honesty, they were larger than this. We had some, it was still larger than this. This one's from the early, 2012 or something. Anyway, back in 2006, I think is when I started. Back in 2006, the cameras were a lot larger. We didn't have boom mics or anything like that. I think we had some mics that we could use, but we also used Final Cut. So I really enjoyed editing the videos, and that was actually probably my favorite thing to do. Kat and I were the co-producers our senior year. That meant that we did a lot of the editing, a lot of the planning. One year we went to the UIL for broadcast journalism. So I wasn't necessarily into broadcast journalism. I had some fun with broadcast journalism, but I was really more into abstract filming. We had this requirement where we were supposed to go through the city of San Antonio and we were supposed to kind of show what San Antonio meant to us, or something like that. I don't actually remember the prompt. And I remember what I did was just get a whole bunch of random ass shots. And I loved it. I thought it was the greatest thing ever. Princess was there with me. I loved what I did. Turns out did not hit the whole broadcast journalism thing, which is sort of the moment I realized, like, oh, I'm not super into broadcast journalism. A lot of kids actually from broadcast, one person very specifically, she was at broadcast at one of our other schools. She actually ended up going on to be a news anchor. And I think she was one of our anchors one year too. I never had any interest in being in front of the camera. And you're probably like, well, why the fuck are you in front of it now? I don't know what else to put on the screen if it's not me. And the videos where it's really only the person's voice are also kind of weird. Granted, weird in the way that I like, but also just kind of weird. I more so enjoyed the back end video editing. So this would be, you know, jump cuts, obviously. Who doesn't love a good jump cut? Insert one here. Backtracks, live type. I think we had some computers that used iMovie, but the Macs, I'm talking like the Macs we had at school were those like just desktop ones that were like white. I thought it was so cool. That's actually where I fell in love with Macs. To this day, I still use Macs. I guess I should also call myself out in that, well, you see, I spent a significant amount of time my senior year not going to school. So there were often times that I missed deadlines. Yeah, not the greatest. I definitely wasn't the greatest producer. Kat could definitely tell you that. Super cool story about Kat, actually. She and I were like acquaintances in high school. We were co-producers. So like she knew me and I knew her. When we both went to college, I guess we kind of like connected, and apparently we used to talk on the phone all the time. I don't remember that. My memory is super hazy. And we just kind of talked about like how much college sucked. So back to the college story. When I was in high school, I really enjoyed video editing. And because I really enjoyed video editing, I decided that I wanted to major in some sort of video editing in college. So what ended up happening was, because I did this like avant-garde, more like modern video, which by the way, if I can find it, I don't even think YouTube was around then, but if YouTube was, it is on YouTube. So I'll just go ahead and see if I can find that. So anyway, I applied to school with the intent of not doing broadcast, because as it turned out, I didn't really like broadcast, but I wanted to edit documentaries. I wanted to be a videographer or a video editor, or I wanted to do something with documentaries. And that was genuinely like one of my big goals back in 2008. 2008, 2009, some of you guys may identify that as the financial crisis of 2008, 2009. I graduated high school in 2008. I had applied to a couple of different colleges, but the one that Princess really wanted to go to, and she told me about, was called Columbia College Chicago. Keep in mind, never toured the school really. They had a 98% acceptance rate at the time. It was really expensive, and it was a private school in downtown Chicago. And I had this mindset that I needed to get out of, you know, the environment I was in, get out of town. And so I chose to go to Chicago. I am from the suburbs of Dallas. So not even like pure downtown Dallas. And I remember my dad's company was getting slow, because at the time my dad actually did a lot of work with commercial real estate. And so I remember like there were definitely some rough times for him, and finances weren't great and that kind of thing. I was like, well, you're a business owner. Of course you're gonna see the impact sooner than others. And then also I was young, so I wasn't privy to all the information about his financial stability. And in all honesty, I was a teenager who was really pretty fucking selfish. I went up to Chicago. And I remember going to Chicago for my orientation in July. It was great. I like loved Chicago. I do remember seeing like a lot of homeless people, but honestly I attributed that to, it's a bigger city than Dallas. And it was nice out, like, because Chicago in July is actually fucking beautiful. So there were a lot of homeless people, and I attributed that to, well, the weather's nice and it's a much larger city than Dallas. So of course there's gonna be more homeless folks. And then I got to school. Within a couple of weeks of school, one of my first classes I took was economics. I took economics in high school, but Chicago economics is very different. And I remember, like, the guy, you know, he used to have a different job, but now he had to be a full-time teacher. I actually worked on campus, which was really cool, by the way. Minimum wage in Texas at the time was like 5 something. And then minimum wage in Chicago was like $8.25. So I remember that being like the coolest thing. I got to work at the college, what I consider decent money, especially considered to Texas's minimum wage. But then I realized there were a lot of 30-something-year-olds doing the same job I was doing for the college who had just graduated. And all of a sudden I realized, well, one, this school's $30,000, right? Like, That's a lot of money. Here's all these kids who got this fine arts degree and like there's no jobs for them. Like they couldn't get jobs. They had to work on campus because they weren't able to get jobs. I remember one of my like favorite colleagues, he was a music producer. But you know, you don't just make money like it's just not something that you just jump into, right? I don't think my first year you could take video courses. I don't know that making videos is going to be a very stable career. Spoiler alert, YouTube became a thing. Probably could have made lots and lots of money being an editor who actually knew what the hell they were doing. Hindsight is 2010. So I was in Chicago in 2008 and I realized all of these folks were graduating with $180,000 in debt. They had liberal arts degrees and in all honesty weren't able to find jobs in an economic like downturn, which looking back probably like makes sense, but my economics class actually taught me that like it did not make sense for me to spend all of this money and have a job that like honestly you kind of have to make it. That was like 2008, 2009, so I think some of the like early creators were definitely on YouTube. All these kids had graduated, were not able to find jobs in Chicago. I would say the homeless population probably increased. Again, I should do some research because this video might be more interesting if I did. With a small liberal arts school costing $30,000 a year, not including like housing and all of that, I just realized like this is not sustainable. My second semester, I changed my major and decided I was gonna go into public relations. I took one public relations class, hated it, got really freaking cold and homesick, and then literally tanked my second semester. A lot of that had to do with being homesick. I had already kind of made up my mind that I was like going to come home, but I also had this like feeling in my head that like coming home was me failing. Looking back at it now, like me going to Chicago was the failure. And yes, I learned a lot about myself, and these are experiences like I'll never get back, and in all honesty, I kind of had to learn. But just because I wanted to be away so bad, what I truly realized was that the person I didn't like was myself. And that's like down a whole nother rabbit hole. But what I really took issue with and like what I thought was everyone around me was making kind of my life hard. And then I realized like, no, that's me, my own mental health struggles. I'm the one who's not happy. So it doesn't really matter if I'm in Chicago or I'm in Dallas or I'm in England. I'm not happy here. I'm not going to be happy anywhere. But again, I was a teenager, I was young, I was dumb, I thought I was doing this really great thing. Even I have a tattoo on my side. It says, "Won't you think I'm pretty when I'm shining top the bright lit city?" It's the used lyrics, but I got it when I was in Chicago because like I just thought I was so badass. Moved to Chicago at the end of August 2008. Got my tattoo in October of 2008. Probably was positive I was moving home in March of 2009. We all make silly decisions. Not my favorite tattoo. It's also on my side, and then as I got older, my metabolism slowed down, I quit working out as much. I didn't live in a city where I had to walk a million blocks. And also, Chicago's cold. Like, let me just tell you, Chicago is cold. Do not visit Chicago in July and assume you're gonna be fine to live there, especially when you spent your whole life in Texas. I always thought, oh, I can put more clothes on, right? Bundle myself up, because the problem in Texas is you get so hot and you can only take off so many clothes. Here's the deal. That wind cuts through every jacket, every snow pant, every long john. It does not matter. You can never get warm enough for Chicago. You know how to stay warm? You stay your ass inside. It also snowed from October 31st to April 1st. I remember calling my dad on April Fool's Day and being like, "Hey dad, it's snowing." And he said, "Haha, April Fool's." I said, "No." Definitely knew I was coming home by then. The reason I say Chicago was a failure, and why I think this is an important message to share, which even though this video is about video editing, but we'll get back there. The reason I think Chicago was a failure is I so badly wanted to get out. I wanted to get out of my environment because I was confident that's what was bringing me down. I later learned that it was all within myself, and that I was going to have to deal with myself whether I lived in Dallas or Chicago or London or Paris or what have you. But when I was young and 18, like I didn't look at it that way. I was like, yes, I'm gonna run away from my problems. And what were my problems? Like not really that big. When I got to Chicago and realized that there were all these people who had gone into all this debt and weren't able to get jobs, I said, I don't want to live here anymore. Add that to the cold, and I was like, okay, this is stupid. There's no reason for me to be spending this amount of money to prove a point. The college I went to, I said 98% of kids got in, and about, I think 40%, I'll check those statistics, about 40% graduate, which really says something about kind of like their ability to kind of let someone in. And I think that certain people definitely thrive in that environment. I have a feeling there are probably some great creators out there today that went to the same college I did. I think that's great. What I realized was that like it wasn't for me, and seeing this large city in this economic crisis was really eye-opening to me. And in all honesty, going to Chicago, I learned a lot about the world, because I had grown up in the South. And there are experiences that like I still will never come in contact with, but being able to hear other people's stories. This is 2008, 2009. I remember taking this race and ethnic relations class, and I remember being accused of being colorblind. And I said, well, how am I colorblind? I have cousins who are mixed. And it was very much like that. Oh yeah, I have a friend who's black. And this was back in 2008, 2009. And I'm very thankful that I took that course and I really got to learn about ethnic divides that impact the world, impact the United States, things that I just didn't even realize. I'll never forget, there's a statement that stuck with me, and it's something I've never forgotten. One of my classmates saying, well, your parents don't have life insurance on you? And I said, no. And she said, well, that's dumb. You know how much it is to bury a kid? And I said, no, I don't, but I don't think people are expecting, kids to die. And she was like, oh, that's because you don't live in Chicago. And I was like, like, Chicago's crime was so bad. Parents had life insurance policies on their kids and had to use them pretty regularly. It was a great experience, and it was something that I needed to go through. Did I need to stay a year? Did I need to spend that much money in college? Did I need to kind of go through all of those experiences? Maybe not. I do want to share a really cool story from Chicago first before I go back to video editing. There was this homeless guy, and he and I were like the best of friends. And so I had a lunch plan through the school, but I'm kind of a picky eater. So what I would do is anytime it was super cold out, I'd go to the cafeteria, I'd grab like a bowl of soup and some breadsticks, and I would take it down to him. And he stood very close to kind of where I lived and where I went to school. And I passed him almost every day. And I will never forget, there was a time I was coming home and it was pretty late. And this other homeless guy kind of tried to start talking to me and kind of tried to start following me. And I will never forget this man who I had taken, soup and breadsticks and that kind of thing. Always gave him spare change when I had it. He told this other guy following me, said, hey, leave her alone. I've got her. There was definitely a small scuffle, but I will never forget this random man on the street deciding that he was going to protect me. It was a really it was an experience that yeah, in Chicago I probably should have been more scared and more cautious than I actually was. But there are good people in this world. It's just super cool because out of all of the friends and all of the people that I met in Chicago, which by the way, I met some really great people there, the person who made the biggest impact on my life was this homeless guy. And it's man, those are the small little impacts that you can make on a day-to-day basis that really do bring positivity into someone's world. I didn't actually get to take any video editing or video courses at all. So I don't know anything more than I learned in high school about videos and video editing. Add to the fact of how much that has changed over the last 10, 20 years. Jeez. I'm new. I'm a fish out of water. This idea that here's the city going through this terrible financial crisis, how am I gonna make it, was what really sent me home. That and being homesick. I was genuinely homesick. That's what brought me home. And when I came home, life wasn't particularly easy. I fell back into some of my old habits. And then the biggest thing I did was I fell out of video editing. I didn't even watch YouTube for the first couple of years. I think I might have been a little bitter about it. Man, there's some really cool videos that I'll have to link, because there's some really cool videos that really went down that style that I really truly wanted to go down. Tons of YouTubers now do docu-series and that kind of things, and that's really what I wanted to do. So I like learning, I like educating other people, I like showing people things they might not have already seen. And that's sort of why I'm sharing my whole YouTube, why I'm sharing all of this on YouTube anyway. It's because I have ADHD, if you couldn't tell by this video. I've tried so many hobbies. And I think it's important for me to share what those hobbies were, what I learned, why I don't do that hobby today, or if I'd like to get back into the hobby. And video editing is one of those things that in high school, it really took me out of some really dark places. It didn't work out when I did it in college. There's no reason why I can't work out now. And when I say work out, I'm not saying make money off of it. I have a normal job. I can make video editing now a hobby. And I can make those videos that I wanted to make. And I think that's the important thing about hobbies, is that, yeah, you only have so much time in a day. There are things that you learned through each of those hobbies. And I think probably the reason I went so off course on this video is because I went to Chicago to focus on video editing or video producing. It didn't happen that way. I don't really know why. I think it's because I had to take basic courses before I could take video classes. Or the video classes filled up really quick and freshmen don't ever get, first pick. What's important is that drive to make videos took me to a college in a town I probably never would have ever gone to. Had Princess not shared with me that college, I would have never gone there. Do I sometimes wish I hadn't? Absolutely. But the things that I learned about myself, how much I love my family, how much different my life is here than the lives people are living in Chicago, and how there's some really great people in this world. That's probably one of my first experiences of here's this amazing person. And yeah, luck's been bad on him. He's down on his luck. I saw this man sleeping on the streets. I saw this man freezing in the winter. I saw him sweating in the summer, and he was making the best of it. And he was doing what he could to give back to the world, whether that's making sure someone didn't fight me, whether that's always saying, hey, beautiful, being a good person. And I think the most important thing that I learned in Chicago is that it is absolutely free to be a good person. What does that have to do with video editing? Really not much. I'm gonna start video editing again because I'm gonna have to edit these videos. I'm gonna try to find some of my old videos. I'm even gonna look to see, what some of our alumni are doing, because I'm sure some alumni from Columbia College have successful YouTube careers. And maybe it's not YouTube careers, but maybe it's, they're editors for YouTubers or something like that. I mean, I'm not sure when YouTube started getting monetized. I can tell you that the idea of being a YouTube creator in 2008, 2009 was more off the wall when kids say they want to do it now. I'm telling you, our phones didn't even record every moment of our lives back then.
Could not find a video, but I was able to locate a photograph taken with a camera cell phone in 2008.
I think the first iPhone had come out, but there were no space on those things. It's interesting to me that the person that you want to be in high school and the person you want to be in college oftentimes ends up being so very different than who you actually are. And that's okay, because I went to Chicago to be a video producer, and now I'm a business analyst at a software company who's probably missing a meeting, and I'm gonna try to make videos on the side when I have time. Thank you for watching. Be sure to fuel up on positivity. It's 100% free to be nice.
Thank you for listening to Into It Over It, a podcast by Fuel Up on Positivity. Be sure to check out our next episode, which will be over arts and crafts.